revise of last just 2 slides. The key non-invasive methods to identify viability. First, ECG, gives very little information. Then echocardiography and DSC we have discussed in the last part. The race tree, the single photon emission computed tomography, SPECT imaging, PET, PET scan, and MRI. That will be discussed today. Now, this for the revision. The contractile reserve will be accessed by the dobutamine echography or the dobutamine MRI. Intact cell membrane will be accessed by the thallium-201 SPECT. Intact mitochondria will be accessed by the technetium-99 SPECT. And the glucose metabolism will be accessed by the FDG imaging. That is the PET scan.
Which one of the three, all four are available here?
Sir, only DSC is available. In Vadodara, MRI is available. Cardiac MRI is available.
Here we can tell some.
Sir, actually, sir, they are doing thallium scan, radionuclide, but they are not expertising that because handling the radioactive material and interpreting the result is little bit tricky.
But they are sending the interpretation to Bombay.
That's why it is tricky. Because you are sending the file. Means if you are reporting, live reporting is there, and if you are sending the file to someone and that he has not seen the patient, because in stress imaging with thallium there is a 3 technique. So we will discuss that.
Where you do MRI here in Kodra?
Sir?
Cardiac MRI?
Sir, SR.
So how they
SR
report? They are our radiologists reporting, or they are also sending to Delhi?
So actually, no, they are our radiologist means in the Q scan, radiologist means I think Yogesh Patel sir himself reporting that MRI. But still, cardiologist intervention is needed who have seen multiple MRIs of cardiac MRI. Because in the specific, if I am doing MRI for sarcoid or if I am doing the myocardial functional MRI, then cardiologist involvement is required. Now, the SPECT. In SPECT, we are taking 3 axes. The first is the short axis, the second one is the vertical long axis, and the horizontal long axis. We can see the side image of this specific axis. SPECT requires the injection of the gamma emitting radioisotope. There are thallium-201 and technetium-99. There are 2 primary useful isotopes. The thallium-201 has the property similar to the potassium. So the intact or the viable myocardium or the intact cell membrane cause active absorption of the technetium thallium-201. And the scar tissue, which is I think non-viable or the necrose tissue, it is not able to concentrate the thallium. The initial myocardial uptake after a IV injection of the thallium is proportional to the regional blood flow. Now, the thallium stress distribution, the uptake of thallium is energy dependent, and if uptake is there, we can say it is a prism myocardial viability. There are 3 imaging is done primarily. First is immediate. Second, after 3 to 4 hours of the distribution of the thallium. Now, if there is a post-stress imaging, means in the routine practice we do TMT. After giving thallium injection, we do the TMT kind of means, and the ECG also recorded during this test. And after doing the TMT, immediate after TMT, the thallium scan is done. Then after 4 hours, second scan is done after 4 hours, and there is a third scan which is done after 24 hours. Now, if there is a defect, at the baseline, if there is a defect at the baseline, that suggests there is some impairment of the oxygen blood flow, there is some impairment of the viability. But this defect persists even after 3 to 4 hours. That indicates the markedly reduced perfusion, means it is a significant reduction in the perfusion, but still we cannot say it is necrosed even after 3 to 4 hours images. The fixed effect at 3 to 4 hour redistribution image may represent only severely hyperperfused, severely hypoperfused, but not necessarily infract tissue. To stamp as an infract tissue, we have to at the early redistributed imaging demonstrate normal thallium uptake even in the later redistribution. Okay. Also, this later means there is a later uptake of thallium. It suggests this myocardium is the viable, either it is hypoperfused but still it is viable. Now, the re-injection. In some patients, we need to re-inject thallium because thallium redistribution is the much extensive. It redistributes in liver and other tissues well. So, in some patients, we need to re-inject thallium to get proper image at 24 hours. Okay. The second one is the technetium sensitivity scan and tetraphosphate. Both of these is similar to the thallium, but
when you need to re-inject,
sorry sir.
when you will re-inject thallium?
Means?
When do you need to re-inject them?
Sir, the thing is, the total concentration of the thallium is measured. If you are getting the low tracer level, the thallium tracer is low during after 4 hours, means after when we take the 4 hours image, and if the thallium level is low in the blood or all over the image, thallium level is low, then we have to re-inject.
That's a subjective and objective both.
That needs the experience of the technician or the person who is performing the test.
The image will not be good.
Exactly.
The thing is, the image will not be
That is the Now, technetium sensitivity similar to the thallium test, but the main thing is in the basic technetium-99 is primarily absorbed by the mitochondria. It is primarily utilized by the mitochondria. So it is similar principle. The only thing is thallium is primarily depending on the potassium transport, sodium potassium ATP transport, and the technetium is primarily depending on the mitochondrial absorption. Here is the image. Now the relation between the tracer uptake in the dysfunctional territory and the subsequent probability of the functional recovery after revascularization. We can say here, if there is a tracer uptake 80 to 100%, the probability of recovery is 100%. But in less than 40% tracer uptake, means decreased tracer uptake, suggests the decrease of the probability of functional recovery. In this slide, we can say the stress. There is a short axis window and the vertical long axis. We can say that there is a apical, almost same. Rest is the perfusion is normal at rest and at the stress also. In the short axis, rest is normal, but at stress there is a decreased perfusion and the decreased uptake. But in the long axis, we can see the both at the apical segment. This is the apical segment. In apical segment, there is a decreased thallium activity, and also at the stress also there is decreased thallium activity. So we can say by this slide, if we revascularize this patient, there would be significant chance of increased contractility in this part,
But not in that apical.
not in the apical.
So that is a permanent damage and this is a revascular.
Yes. So severe apical defect is a fixed defect. Basal and mid inferior lateral wall defect is reversible. There is a one study, FT et al. This study 246 consecutive ischemic cardiomyopathy patient and the distribution gated SPAC thallium study was done. Now the size and severity of the perfusion defect was assessed by the automated method. Regions with less than 50% activity versus normal were considered non-viable. Means if thallium index is less than 50%, then considered the non-viable in this study. Now, in this study, the final outcome was survival was better for this with the smaller area of the non-viable myocardium. If the revascularization has mortality advantage over the medical therapy when the area of non-viable myocardium was less than 20 but not larger. So if non-viable myocardium is very less, then there is a mortality benefit. in short, means if there is a more viable myocardium, there is a definitely mortality value. Now PET scan. The glucose utilization is evaluated with the FDG PET and the regional perfusion is assessed with the N93 ammonia, rubidium 82 and O50. That is a combined imaging. So perfusion and the viability or the glucose uptake both are studied in this PET scan. Now the FDG, the mechanism it means the FDG is transported to cell by the same sarcolemmal carrier as the glucose, and it is phosphorylated to FDG 6-phosphate by enzyme. So intracellular accumulation of the FDG suggests there is a viable cell or the viable myocardium. If there is hypoxia, cell will first utilize the glycogen. If the glycogen is depleted, then it will utilize the circulating glucose. So, if there is a hypoxia or the diffuse impairment in the hypoxia or the impairment in the blood flow, there will be increased uptake of FDG in comparison of the normal tissue. Now, non-viable myocardium will appear as a region of low FDG concentration. Reversible injured myocardium may have normal glucose utilization or above than normal. Reversible injured means myocardium with the hypoxia but still viable. They have above normal or the normal FDG uptake, but the non-viable myocardium has a low FDG concentration. Now, this will combine with the perfusion imaging. The myocardial blood flow is assessed by the ammonia 13 N13 ammonia perfusion imaging. Now, the late distribution of the N13 PET image is useful in the assessment of the myocardial viability, and the late distribution of the 82 rubidium image is the that is suggests there is an intact myocardial membrane, because rubidium is also accumulated in the myocardium with the sodium potassium bond. The combined value of the perfusion and metabolism PET means perfusion PET and the metabolism means ammonia PET plus FDG PET. The combination of the result with the ammonia PET we are getting the result about the perfusion of the myocardium, and FDG we are getting result about the activity or the viability of the myocardium. This is the gold standard for the identification of the hibernating myocardium. The identification of the region with the low perfusion preserved by ammonia and despite normal FDG uptake is highly predictive both functional recovery. Means if you have decreased perfusion but still myocardium is viable, showing with increased uptake of the glucose, so it is suggestive of the both functional recovery and survival post vascularization. Here, this one is the stress imaging and this one is the at rest. We can say at rest and the stress defect is almost same, but this is the perfusion imaging. First one is and the second one is the FDG viability. We can in both slides we can say the defect is the same, but FDG viability is good. So there is a definitely the patient will definitely get better after the revascularization. Looking at it here with one study with comparison of the thallium scan, 47% of the irreversible thallium defect were identified as the viable on PET image. So thallium has little bit low sensitivity in detecting viable myocardium. There is a two comparative studies PET and PET with 30 to 40% of the irreversible thallium defect has enhanced FDG uptake. Now MRI. There is a three techniques while doing MRI is used to identify the viability. First is the resting MRI, which is that includes the T2 weighted images and the cine imaging. The second one is the dobutamine MRI. It is more or less similar as the dobutamine space echo DSE. The third one is the contrast enhanced MRI. Resting MRI primarily identify end diastolic volume and the wall thickness and any resting RWML. The dobutamine MRI evaluate the contractile reserve, and the third one, contrast enhanced MRI, means late gadolinium enhancement leads to identification of the scar tissue. Now, resting MRI, the parameter is end diastolic wall thickness less than 6 mm, represent the transmural scar. Dobutamine MRI contractile reserve, increase resolution of the MRI and avoid subjective variation of the echo. Echo, the results are interpreted by the echocardiographer. MRI, everything is automated and machine counted. So there is a less subjective variability and there are high chances of getting perfect or the reproducible results. Sensitivity of 89% and specificity of 94% to predict improvement after revascularization. The contrast enhanced MRI, which is late gadolinium enhancement, allows the precision detection of the scar tissue and extent and transmurality of the scar can be accessed. Means in LG, it is kind of gold standard for identification of the scar tissue. In late gadolinium enhancement, the gadolinium contrast we are injecting is primarily accumulated or the binded to the scar on the kind of the non-viable myocardium, and the rest of myocardium is hypointense. So, if there is a bright tissue during the late gadolinium enhancement, we can identify it is the scar, and there is a less chance or almost no chance of the getting functional recovery. It is similar to FDG PET in detecting scar. It is almost as gold standard. Now, the contractile reserve compared to SPECT stent, both thallium and TensaMIB Dobutamine stress MRI is less sensitive but more specific. Compared to PET scan, which is a gold standard, sensitivity and specificity of the dobutamine MRI is resulted to be 81 and 95%. Contrast enhanced MRI, direct or indirect assessment of the viability.
All PET scan machines are doing this kind of thing. All PET scan machines which are available.
Yes, sir.
What is your experience?
Sir, I have experience in 2 or 3 patients with the PET scan. Actually, more useful if there is a post-plastic patient or the post-CABG patient, in which we are means primary in dilemma to address which stent. If we do patient don't want to go invasive method, we can do PET scan. If there is a viable myocardium with the perfusion defect, we can definitely take the patient through the procedure. That is the primary indication. I think that is the most important indication. We have seen I have personally seen 2 or 3 patients in whom one patient we have patient hadn't any symptoms. He was come for the routine follow-up and he was more asked about the stents are functioning are well or the perfusion are well, but he don't want to go with the invasive. So we have advised that this perfusion imaging is ready.
Or other way around, if the patient has symptoms post-procedure,
Yes, sir.
that is also one.
That is, yes, that is correct. Means they are the for the complex or the multivessel plastic. They are more important in the multivessel disease, and we can address the proper vessel if there is a complete total obstruction. CTO is there, and we want to address that. We can give proof that after opening this CTO or after addressing this lesion, there will be definitely improving the myocardial function.
But do we not get any idea on the OCT or flexion through reserve?
So that all are the invasive methods.
No. During, for example, multivessel we have a problem. You address the culprit vessel, open up the vessel, and then we tell the patient that you wait for a while. We'll review. Now,
Sir, FFR and OCT both helps.
during the first invasive,
Yes, sir.
if
But
we are doing FFR OCT, will it not give us an answer that should we touch the other 2 vessels or 1 vessel or not?
not much, sir. Because they are primarily characterized with the vessel or the during the procedure.
That will give how significant the obstruction is. That will not comment on viability.
That will not reflect the impact
Studying
of
and hypertension. Because generally during myocardial infarction, whenever there is myocardial infarction acute, there is studying first. And after that, if that lesion or obstruction is persistent for maybe a couple of weeks, then myocardial will go to hypertension. Neither FFR nor IVAS nor OCT is going to tell us anything
Yeah,
about
during the
this.
procedure.
Yes, during and OCT and I was only anatomical measurements.
But if you have done one plastic, you have done one vessel plastic, you have to take a call for a second one, whether you need to, when this will help.
Yeah, if it is open vessel, like stenosis is 80%, 90%, then FFR will definitely help. Whether the lesion is physiological significant, whether myocardium beyond that lesion is going to improve after that stenting or not, FFR in that case will help. But after myocardial infarction, when there is 100% stenosis,
In
it will not.
older times, when you did angiography, we used to do the LV function with the dial. These days we don't see that much.
Yes.
We don't do. Now, what is that LV function as compared to the scanning modes that we have done? That is live LV function.
Yeah, even now also we can do that while doing angiography. If we see myocardial blush, that is dye is getting uptake by myocardium. After opening vessel, if we can see myocardial blush, then it is going to improve for sure. Because myocardium is taking that dye, and that's why there is a blush, so there is haziness in the myocardium. So that way we can indirectly say that myocardium is myocardial.
Pre-procedure, if you push the dye, we used to see LV function.
Yes, yes.
Visually, we used to write 30%, 20%, that is what I
Yes,
recollect.
definitely.
Now, how do we compare that with the
That is also again, that dye induced is again also subjective. When there is subjective variation, these are objective methods all. MRI, PET, all are objective methods.
That myocardial blush you see, that is up to which level you can see? It's all transmural or just subepicardial or?
Generally subendocardial.
All is subendocardial.
Subendocardial.
So that is very subjective. It cannot
That
be.
is also very subjective, yes.
The contractile reserve, which is evaluated by the MRI, means compared with that, it is good amount of the sensitivity and specificity. Now, contrast enhanced MRI, which is late gadolinium enhancement, that allows the direct or indirect assessment of the viability. There is 3 patterns with enhanced signal hyperintensity. The first one is the early hypointensity and no late hyperintensity, means both hypo. So that is the viable myocardium with no contrast uptake. The second is early hyperintensity and the late hyperintensity, both hyper, that is the infarct or the scarred myocardium. The late is early hypointensity with late hyperintensity, that is a combination. The type 1 pattern, hypo, indicate the diffuse myocardial. I think I missed it. Type 1 pattern is overfunctional recovery after the revascularization. Now, the recovery after revascularization depends on the transmural extent of the scar. Highly probable if there is a less than 25% extent from total wall thickness. That is a highly probable chance of the recovery. And if there is a more than 75% extent of the scar, very low chance or almost nil chance of the myocardial function recovery. In compared of the DSC, the transmural extent by scar by MRI is inversely related to the contractile reserve by DSC. So if the more scar is involved, more amount of myocardial scar, it is less involved on the contractile reserve. Now, in this image, we can see that is a before revascularization image and this is the after revascularization image, and diastole and end systole image. You can see the RWMA or means impaired contractility in this and septal segment. Okay, but after revascularization, we can see the increase in myocardial thickness is there and also increase in the contractility after revascularization. There is no hyper enhancement on LG, late contrast imaging, compared to this image. In this image, there is a contrast enhancement suggestive of this anterior and anterolateral segment. There is a hypokinesia and diastole and end systole. There is a definitive hypokinesia with contrast enhancement that suggestive of the scar tissue. After revascularization, there is a still RWMA is there. So there is a no improvement in the function. There is one article use of contrast enhanced MRI to identify reversible myocardial dysfunction. The result of this article was less than 25% delayed enhancement has positive predictive value of the 71%. Its extent of the scar tissue is less than 25%, leads to good result. Both dysfunctional and not hyperenhanced before vascularization was strongly related to the degree of improvement in the global mean wall motion score. That is the echo parameter. That means increase in the wall motion after revascularization. In this, we can say relation between the transmural extent of the scar. Transmural extent of the scar. If extent is more than 75%, the thallium activity and the redistribution and the wall motion score both are decreased with transmural extent of the scar. Now, there is one article in JAG that suggested the late gadolinium enhancement appears to have highest predictive accuracy. These are the guidelines which we have used during this article. So, for the predictive improvement in the regional global function after revascularization, there is a class 1 indication to go with the stress distribution in the thallium scan, fat and FDG and the sexamity. Late thallium scan. Now, in this wall, there was an older image in this all this. MRI was not indicated or it was not class 1 indication. Now, impact of the revascularization on LV function. Studies show the LV ejection fraction improves significantly after revascularization in 60% of the patient. To predict 5% improvement in the LVEF, at least 25% of the LV should be viable using DSC and 38% using conventional nuclear medicine and the PAT. The treatment and the survival rate. In absence of hibernation, no significant difference in mortality with revascularization. Revascularization results in 79% reduction in the mortality if there is a viable or the hibernating myocardium or the viable myocardial tissue, which is 16% and the 3.2%. Here we can see that if there is a viable myocardium is there with medical, this is the medical treatment and this one is the revascularization. The death rate quite increasing with kind of 80% reduction in the death rate. So if there is a viable myocardium is there and we do revascularization, but the myocardium is non-viable, there is no significant mortality benefit with the revascularization.